Hey everybody, it is technically, what day is it today? Wednesday. New Year's Eve is tomorrow, and Friday is New Year's. And this video will be coming out on New Year's because, let's face it, I'm going to be staying up all night long with my puppy, with really loud action flicks playing from like noon to, I don't know, 1 o'clock in the morning, because that'll get her used to making noises, because a rescue dog, yeah, noises and all that stuff is just, and she's older anyway, she's about 11 now, so, it scares her. So if I can get her the noises going, and, she might be on a little CBD oil or something like that, and she's just hanging out in her blankets, and, the lights are on in the house, and the movie's going at Mach 10, turn up to 11. There's explosions going everywhere. I don't know what I'm going to watch. A bunch of somethings, but, we'll call it a movie-thon. That's what we're doing, and that'll keep her sane. So that's going to be happening all day Thursday. And then Friday morning is New Year's Day. And New Year's Day, believe it or not, is actually my wife's birthday. So, shh. But I don't really have any plans for New Year's other than I'm going to buy probably a second paddleboard this week, and then we're going to go out and paddle around or I'll borrow my friend. I'll probably borrow Rob's tomorrow, because I'm going to see Rob tomorrow. There's a story there, but I'm not telling you that story. In my cup tonight is kombucha with turmeric and black pepper, because you need the black pepper to absorb the turmeric. And I just like kombucha, and I like tea, and I don't like coffee, and I don't like... Well, that's about. I like just about everything, but actually, coffee's growing on me. Anyway, that has nothing to do with it. Today, I'm gonna do story time for New Year's, for Friday. This will be loading on Friday, so you guys will see this. I'm gonna actually make it come out at midnight on Friday, so it'll be New Year's Day, New Year's video to come out. You guys will see it. Why am I telling you that now? Because if you're watching this, you already know that it came out. Anyway, story time. Driving around, I've been thinking about stories. Which ones to tell you folks? Oh, by the way, my front seat's in my car. You already saw that video. It is really, really crunchy, and it stinks real bad, so I've like flooded it with bleach, and the bleach is killing everything, and my wife wants me to now get it upholstered, so that has nothing to do with story time. Story time. What am I going to tell you guys about this time? I'm going to tell you about the Bonneville Salt Flats the first time I ever went. So, growing up, so you already know that I was born in Idaho and lived there till I was like 9 or 10, and then about that time we moved around a little bit during the like 9 or 10 years old, and then we ended up in Nevada, in Reno specifically. And then after high school, a little bit older, I moved back to Idaho, back to the Boise area. And Boise is only 300 and some odd miles from, Wendover, Nevada. And I waited till 2007, I think, to go. 6 or 7 was the first time I went, and I had my coupe, actually, and it wasn't chopped. And I just went down there, and it was in like a gray primer and had some crab claw looking flames on it, and it had kind of like, had Babe Moons on it and solid wheels, and I had kind of like a rake to it, and had a small block in it, automatic, and highway gears, and it was just a 46 Chevy coupe cruiser with flames. It's kind of cool. Drove around like that for a while. The primer, was coming off. But I met, the Jalopy Journal had the ham then, and they had like a ham rally at, then, and I met a bunch of people, like the last day. I just happened to show up, and I met a bunch of folks, and hung out with them, and, one of them needed a place to stay. She was heading back through town. It was Denise, and she had this big '47 Olds convertible that was kind of a lavender, dark purple color. It was really cool convertible. It had white walls, really cool, like a late '40s, early '50s looking custom, but it was a convertible. Cool car, cool girl. And we had our back house, and so she stayed back in our house where our in-laws stayed, and that was really fun. Having her hang out was pretty cool. Someone I'd never met, we just opened our house up. We did that a lot. It was kind of fun. You know, cool, like-minded gearheads. But that was my first time out there. I think it was '06. And for the longest time on my wind window, I had that year ham, salt-cured ham, I think it said on the sticker on the wind wing. And I had that forever like that. Then I got another sticker the next year. I think it was '07 or '08. Might have been '07. And that's the story I want to tell you about this one. Was I had through the Jalopy Journal, the forums had like a side chat room, and I met some guys called actually, I'll be right back, and I'm going to show you who they are. I'll be right back. Intermission. I was back. So this group, I was never into car clubs, for the reason that most car clubs, whenever you join them, you know, a lot of the guys, they liked cars, but they weren't really handy. And so what ended up happening was the guys that were super handy ended up coming over and doing all the work on people's rigs, and then when it was done and they need help on their car, well, everybody was just too busy, or they just didn't have skills. And so I didn't want to join a club because, for that reason, a local club I never did. Same with motorcycles, never joined a local motorcycle club for the same reason. But I was invited to join this club, and this is my plaque. I've had this plaque for I think I got this plaque in 2004 or 5. Jay would know. He'll tell me. He watches these. He'll tell me. He'll text me. Anyway, these guys made this plaque, and they painted it for me. Actually, the guy that went by the Tin Man, his name was Jay too. He made this, and he also made me a clock where he bead rolled in some cool old vintage looking skulls and stuff in behind one of those old like neon clocks. It was really cool. And did stainless button head fasteners all the way around to count the minute hands and the hour hands. It was pretty cool. Had that clock for a long time, and I think it got destroyed somehow at a shop I was in on accident. I think it fell off the wall or something, or I don't remember. Anyway, but I've had this for years, and I've never put this on a vehicle. It's gonna go on this car. I'm really proud of it. I also have, you know, like a pea jacket, you know, like a sailor's naval jacket, wool one, and it's engraved with my name on it and stuff, and embroidered. I've had that for a long time. Anyway, this story revolves around this club. So I was going to Bonneville. I had my coupe, and I had dropped it down. It was real low, and I had made full metal fender skirts, and I had sanded the car down, trying to sand it down to bare metal, but some of the paint that was on it and some of the stuff was really hard to get off. And so there was like bits and pieces of a sanded car, which is a really cool look now, patina, but it wasn't then. And no one really had that stuff going on. It wasn't like super cool. When I had done it, it wasn't like neat. And no one was really doing 40s Chevys, really, I guess. They weren't super popular. I think there may have been one or two other guys, but that's not the point anyway. I was my only vehicle. I didn't have another vehicle to drive. I only had that car. So I drove out there and camped in it at the bend in the road and stayed out there and watched those guys light Volkswagen case halves, magnesium case halves on fire, and then huge fireworks, and that thing's a huge party. There's car shows, and it was a good time. Had a really good time out there with some friends of mine from Idaho, some car clubs. We all kind of cruised out there. In my car, I kept the trunk full of tools, like a full toolbox, a full-size jack, jack stands, you know, a small bottle torch. Like I had everything in that car in the back seat because all my friends were going to break down and stuff was going to happen driving these hot rods. And, you know, I was the guy that I just helped. I'd see a car on the side of the road, I'd pull off and help. And I had a fully loaded car. And the car's a tail dragger anyway, so, you know, that much weight in the back, it really didn't matter. I mean, it was the same. It looked the same, loaded or unloaded. Anyway, I was rolling out there to Bonneville, and we were there, and I meet these guys. I was with my friends, and these guys in this club, the president, Troy, came out, Jay came out, and Jeff's son came out. And the vehicles they brought out were, they carpooled. So Jeff brought out his 32 Ford 5-window coupe, highboy, and his car, he basically bought a pile of parts. And I'm talking, I don't know how to describe this to you, but someone's calling me. I don't know how to describe this to you, but the pile of parts was, his grill shell was made out of 4 different grill shells that he had unfolded these pieces to make a grill shell. And his body was the same. Like he had part of a roof and part of a door and part of a rear quarter and part of the back sail panel. And he had like basically unfolding old stock cars that had been wrecked, you know, and chopped up into pieces. He unfolded these pieces like unfolding a ball of tinfoil and straightening them back out and all that stuff. And that's what he had created. And in fact, he had a heavy 32 Ford heavy axle that was bent for circle track racing, for camber really heavy on one side and caster, and he had to straighten it, and that's all he had to use. And he had a 53 Ford flathead and a top loader trans and the stock rear end, I think it was 411s, and he drove that on bias plies on all the way down, like a car looked like it came out of the early 40s. He and his son was young. I think he was like 9 I think he was. Good kid. Had a good time. They came out with that. And the other car was Jay, who these guys are all still, they're really good friends of mine. Jay is, I talk to him all the time, but he came out with Troy, and Troy was the president, and Troy had his black 40 Ford coupe that was, you know, like a early 60s, late 50s hot rod. No hood, black and white checkered firewall, dual quad 327 Muncie 4-speed, and I think it had 410s too, but it was rolling on bias plies with chrome reverse rims. And those guys just came out. I tell everybody they came out to see me because of a new club member, or Ben was a club member and they were coming all the way out, but that wasn't it. Everybody was coming to Mecca. They're coming to the Bonneville Salt Flats, and so we all met up, and it was really fun. We had a good time. My dog is having a hard time in there, but Molly, no. Shh. Anyway, I have so many stories about that particular thing I could go on, but anyway, I met these guys and they came out and we had a really good time. And Jay knew the guys informally of the Old Crow Speed Shop, and they had a belly tanker, like a World War II, you know, drop tank that they had turned into a race car, and it had a Model B Ford flathead, or a flathead Model B 4-cylinder that Max from H&H Flatheads had built, and Bobby Green owned the car, and there's a bunch of other people that were there crewing, and I got to meet those guys. That was pretty cool. With Jay, he introduced us, and it was pretty cool. We had to stand behind the lines and watch those guys work and stuff. I think this guy Lucky was from some hot rod shop in California, was the crew chief, but that was a good time. Bonneville was great. Got to play around and have a good time. I've got a bunch of stories about the Old Crow Speed Shop and that particular day, and not a bunch, but some, and then more about that trip with those guys. But I'll end this video with that. It's you meet people online like you guys that I'm meeting through this YouTube, And you may never meet face to face, but that doesn't mean that you're not compatible, you wouldn't be good friends. And I was fortunate enough to talk to these guys online for several years before we actually met in person. And they actually, were the vagabonds. And I think I'm the one farthest west. I think I was the one farthest west when I was in Idaho. Anyway, but yeah, there's some good friends. And I know Jay watches these, so hey Jay. That's a pretty good trip. 2000, might have been 2008, because we were planning 2008 to do the 2010. Is that right? Our 10-year reunion. Bring Jeff and Donovan. I don't know. His son. I can't remember. Was it 7 or 8? Someone's gonna have to correct me. Anyway, you never know where you're gonna meet your friend. So I'm thankful for having you guys along with this. And I make these stories because, like, sitting down and talking with you guys as if, you're right here with me in the car and we're cruising down the street and BSing about, whatever we were doing in the past or whatever we're gonna do for fun. But anyway, I hope you guys have a happy new year and are safe, and I'll see you in the next one. Hey, alright, it's the next one. So this one will be coming out on Saturday. Nope. I'm going to make this another New Year's one. Nope. Yes, I am. I'm going to make this same thing New Year's. So, same group of guys. Jay, Jeff, Troy. We're all in the pits. And so, to get in the pits at Bonneville, you leave the bend in the road. You come around. So you leave Wendover. You go past the Mexican restaurant truck stop where the showers are. You go about a mile and a half, maybe 2 or something, and then there's the road. The highway makes a bend and heads out towards comes out and makes a bend and heads straight out towards the salt. And it's a few miles out of the salt. So on this bend, they call it bend in the road. Everybody camps right there. And there's like a creek or something, and some people camp on this side and some people with motorhomes camp on that side, and all around. It ends up being a good time. And man, I have a lot of stories of being out there. Some involve barstool go-karts. Yeah, like 100cc shifter carts mounted in a shortened wheelbase, all within the confines of a chrome barstool with a T-handle to steer it, and like a thumb throttle and a single brake. Yeah, wheelie bar. Definitely needed a wheelie bar. That's how you get to the bathrooms. Or that's how we would get to the bathrooms. My friends just hop on one of those and buzz over to the bathrooms, the porta potties. Anyway, that's not the story. I can tell you stories about those. I'm telling you a story about actually going to see the Old Crow Speed Shop for the first time. So we all pile in. At that time, my car had air conditioning. That's right, my coupe. Power steering, power brakes, Mustang 2 front end, highway gears, automatic, and air. So several of us are piled in this car and we're heading out. And I think it's me and Jay, I think, are in my car. Somebody else, because mine had air. And I think Troy brought his 40, and Jeff and his son, definitely, Donovan, they definitely came out with the 32 Ford. So we're all in line. And I'd never been out here before, and these guys kind of knew what to do. They'd heard, through the grapevine how you get this done. So you show up and you go directly into like you pull off to the side there's a long tech line. And tech starts like on Wednesday or Thursday. And they start racing, I think it's Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, all the next week, and they end on the following Saturday, I think. So it's called Speed Week for a reason. But they tech early. It's a long tech line, but you can go to the head of the tech line because you're not racing, and you just walk right up to the trailer where they're checking people in, and you can get a pit pass, which is an orange sticker that goes in the front of your car, and you have like the car number, like the crew number, and just a crew member. You stick it in the front corner of your windshield, and then you can bypass everybody and used to be able to the line getting in, and you would just go over to the left, and there's an entrance, and the guy would see your orange thing and flag you in. and we'd drive into the pits. Then you go all the way down. You could cruise up and down the pits if you were a crew member in the pits instead of having to park where the spectators were, which there wasn't really a whole lot of spectators because Bonneville is like not really a sporting event where spectators would go. It's mostly you're not really competing against except for yourself, and cars can be in line for several hours waiting to get in, and it doesn't matter if the car in front of you is 200-mile-an-hour car and your car is doing 100. It could be powered by a bunch of tightly wound rubber bands, or it could be a 68 Camaro with a flathead Ford. You don't know what's going on, but that's definitely that's what's going on out there. There's a myriad of different kinds of cars out there, and everybody helps everybody. There's no real competition. It's just help anybody, do whatever you can, spare parts. It's a free-for-all. It's a bunch of really good time, and if you're standing too long next to somebody's pits, they'll probably ask you to help, which is really fun. And so we ended up down about halfway down, maybe mile 3 on the long course, which is, it's timed 5 miles, but it's actually 8 miles long because there's a shutdown. And so I think we were sitting about mile 3, if I'm right. I don't know what happened there, but I ended up changing the battery because it was getting hot, and I think that might have been it. It might have been having issues. Anyway, mile marker 3. So the pits run, if you're standing at the edge of the track, or the pits run this direction. The track takes off from the start line and goes that direction. So if a wreck happens, it doesn't go into the pits. And there's like 3 tracks that run off on this like center thing. There's like a fast track, the long track, there's like a medium track, and then there's a special track way down around for like experimental stuff for guys just trying to test stuff out and make it go before you actually try and go for a time trial. It's like just a test track. But I think it's only like 3 miles long, so you get like a mile time, and then you gotta slow down or something. I don't remember. So anyway, we make it down mile 3. So Lucky's got his truck there. Bobby's in the tent. Max is back there. And a bunch of cool people were there. And I show up behind to the rope, and my buddy Jay knows these guys, and I'm like, hey, how's it going? So he's like, hey, can we help out? And they're like, sure, do this. And so he's washing parts, I think, in a tub or something. And there's a pickup backed up, and there's spare parts, and here's this guy Max, who I hadn't met yet, or Bobby or any of these guys. I was kind of watching, and I can overhear they got an issue with the engine. One of the pistons melted down, and I can see he's holding the piston in his hand. He's got a bunch of people, and there's people asking him all sorts of questions, and he's getting irritated. And he kind of walks by me, and I said, hey. He looks up, he's like, what? Looks at me, I said, hey, were the rings, were they tight in the ring groups? Was it hard to pull out? And he says, no, why? I said, well, it's not pre-detonation then. You didn't, because it didn't hammer the rings tight in the ring lands. But the center of the piston was melted in this weird but symmetrical shape, like the top of the piston. These are dome pistons. They look like a Hemi piston, and it's side valve with a dome, and the heads are custom built that Max built. But the center of the piston is cut out. Not cut out, but just like folded in. And he's like, I don't know what's going on. I said, well, can I see the piston? And he's like, sure. So I check it, and it's not bent. The rod's not bent, and it moves pretty freely. It just looks like someone took a blowtorch and just melted this thing. And I flip it over, and the bottom side of the dome, someone had milled out. When they were balancing and lightening up all of the pistons, they had milled out the bottom side of the dome to where it went from being just normal piston thickness to it was super thin, and the shape of how they had milled it was exactly what had folded in, was this shape. And I was like, well, there's your problem right there. And he says, what do you mean? I said, do you have a replacement piston? He goes, yeah, sure. So he hands me a piston, and I shit, and this one is exactly the same, been milled out. And I said, well, there's your problem. Do these two shapes look the same? And he's like, oh. I said, well, who's the idiot that milled these pistons like this? And he's like, Aries. And I was like, well, they should have known better. That's a flame front, and you know it's gonna get hot, especially on a flathead or this cylinder head where the spark plug was in relation to the valves, and where the heat was for it trying to get a full pattern across it to get the full flame front to go. It wasn't gonna work. The design was bad. It needed a second plug on the back side because it looked like a Hemi cylinder. Knock it off! And they had put the spark plug right over the top of the valve cover, or the valves in the block, and that's traditionally where flatheads go. The chambers are not traditionally shaped this way. They're shaped more of like an oblong with the two valve reliefs, are normally flat or have an angle. But he had made like a Hemi, and so there was no way to throw spark on this back side to get the flame front to work, to get like a full burn. And that's what we were discussing. He's like, well, come in here. So open the thing, I slide under the thing, we walk over and we start talking. He and I hit it off, and we were talking. He's like, well, who are you? And I'm like, nobody. And Jay just looks up. He's like, oh. I look down at Jay, and Jay smiles, and he's like, oh, I came with these guys. They're friends of mine. And then like, he's just asking me questions. So, and this is the engine builder. So we just started talking shop and how to do this. And one of the other guys who I knew of, his name was Jack, and he's a motorcycle guy. And I asked Jack, I said, hey Jack, what's the fastest way to make a shovel head faster? He goes, oh, you dual plug it. And I looked at Max, and he's like, what do you mean? I said, well, look where your spark plug is, and look at your chamber, and look at this side, and look at how it had burned on the head, and how, you know, you got unburnt fuel going over here. And I asked him, I said, what's your exhaust temps? And he says, I don't know, they didn't have a EGT, I think, at that time. And no vacuum gauge, all sorts of stuff. And they were running 2 Strongbergs. And at that time, Strongbergs had just made new carburetors. So these are brand new 97s. And they were definitely built for this motor. And he had a third one. He said, I want to throw a third one in. And I was like, well, does it need a third one? And he says, well, I want to do it anyway. I was like, okay. And I forget how fast they were chasing. I think like 124 was the record they were trying to beat or something, or over 119 or something. I forget what they were trying to hit. But I was like, are you sure it needs it? And so we started talking about volumetric efficiency and CFM size and all that fun stuff. And I said, well, you can't do it the way the thing is made, because the way the carbs are set up on this intake manifold that he had made, you'd have to raise the center one up to clear the other ones, but then you'd have to figure out a way to get air into the back carburetor. And so without the body on the car, or the roof of the body on the car, there's no way to know if there's enough clearance. And I was like, well, I don't know if it'll fit, but you could do it. I said, but you'd need like a spacer to space this thing up for linkage and for stuff for the head. But you know, he's like, well, what could we use? I was like, you could use hardwood. Hardwood will make a good spacer to not do it. And so Jay ends up cutting a piece of hardwood and making this thing making a spacer, you know, because it's real dense, and it worked great. But the issue was, how do we have clearance? And Jay's like, oh, we'll just go, you know, put a ball on top of the carburetor and stick the roof on top of the body. And they're like, what? He goes, oh yeah. So he goes out to the 40 Ford, opens the trunk lid, and they brought like, you know, loaves of bread and bologna and tinfoil. So he makes a tinfoil ball and sticks it up in the mouth of the carburetor. They stick the body on, and it squishes the tinfoil down only so big, so they know how much room they had above the top of the carburetor by this section, you know, slicing a cross section out of this tinfoil ball that they had made. It was brilliant, but it was just stuff like that. That's what goes on at Bonneville, and it just kind of endeared us to them. They wanted us out there, you know, helping them for the remainder of their runs, and I stayed for a while. In fact, for a couple years after those guys left and went back to like Missouri and Kansas and stuff where they came out from, Jay and Troy and Jeff, H&H and Bobby and those guys, Old Crow, they're from California. So like they would call me, hey, we're going to do this race. Can you meet us? Or, you know, what do you think? And I mean, I know Max actually made a set of heads like that with the dual plugs. And I know that they went out and ran, and I asked them, I said, what kind of fuel do we have out here? And so we went for, back the timing off and lower the, we backed the timing off so we didn't have so much total, but I also wanted to get I wanted to slow the flame front down. And so we played with fuels, the octane stuff, and mixed some stuff to get it to where the flame would get a full propagation. But I wanted a little bit quicker front to move, but enough fuel if we were adding this thing. So we actually went lower octane, but retarded so I could get a quicker, harder burn, almost like not pre-detonation, but we went for what we could get. And I think they put an EGT temp in one of the pipes to see where we were at. But anyway, they went out and ran it. I actually had to go home, and they called me, and they made one of their passes, and they beat the record. And then they had to go to impound, is what they call it, and the car goes and sits in impound, and you can go in and work on it, but you got to do a turnaround and back it up. The car can't go to your pits and modify, but you can work on it in the impound lot where all the cars are that just set records, but you have to back it up on the return run. So you have to make like a back-to-back pass. And these guys got lucky. They did it late enough in the afternoon to where there weren't any more passes going that night, so they had all night to work on it. Well, because they kick you out of the park about 7, but they had like enough time to go work on it if they needed to later in the in the morning or whatever, so the car could cool off and wouldn't be hot lapping it, which was really fun. But man, it was a good time. I miss those guys, but it was great. Out of that came some really good friends. But yeah, you never know what's going to happen. You show up someplace like that, and Bonneville is one of those places where while we were doing this, guys were just coming and borrowing parts, and that's what these guys were doing. They were running around the pits to borrow parts all over the place. In fact, George Poteet, he had a streamliner there, and it was him and his buddy, and they were running I think an blown alcohol Hemi, like you would find like in a dragster, but they were running in this car, and I think the car did like 460 some miles an hour. But they kept chewing up quick change gears, and they were borrowing quick change gears from everybody. I know they borrowed gears from the Old Crow Speed Shop group, specific ones. They just kept chewing them up. Too much power or something, it was hooking up. But man, it was really fun. I have a lot of stories about Bonneville. My first time there, and second, third, and fourth, and fifth time there. Like, I went all the time until we moved here. I went for like 3 or 4 more years. It was a really good time. I'd love to go. I'd like to finish this car and bring some friends and their cars, and let's make a journey. COVID, and let's make a journey to ship the cars over, fly over, grab the cars, and all of us drive to Bonneville, and then drive back and put the cars in the boat and bring them back. I think it'd be fun, because there's a huge car show, and it's all hot rods and all old cars. It's just nothing but gearheads. At least that's what it was, what it's like. I don't know what it's like now, but that's definitely what it was. There was not a whole lot of spectators. And mostly people spectating were the people in the pits. But Bonneville is definitely a good time. But yeah, that's where I'll leave you guys for this one, 2 on New Year's. And I'll probably be sitting right here, and I'll film the one that you'll see tomorrow next. So, Happy New Year's.